ISO FileMaker Magazine, the professional's resource for FileMaker know-how.
Hey there, and welcome back to yet another FileMaker tutorial video where we are going to learn more about FileMaker Pro. My name is Matt Petrowski, bringing you these tutorials from my website, FileMakerMagazine.com. In this video, we are taking a look at a continuation of the MonkeyBread plugin. This is part 3 of a 3-part series that I've been doing about the MonkeyBread plugin because it is so exhaustive and has so much stuff. This video is going to be more about what can you do with the MonkeyBread plugin, given that it's got 7,000 functions. Let's head to my desktop and take a look at what I'm talking about. All right, thanks for joining me here on my desktop. And as we covered in the first video, we got all of the things that are free if you simply just install the MonkeyBread plugin. These are the things that enhance our environment. In video 2, we talked about digging through the documentation because there's literally so much there. In this one, in this part 3, I am going to talk about how I use the MonkeyBread plugin, how I integrate it into my solutions. You can follow and do the same way that I do. And then we're just going to go through some of the fundamental areas. I talked about looking at the examples. This is going to be a little bit more of a, geez, what's available in the MonkeyBread plugin. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is how do I implement the MonkeyBread plugin typically into my solutions. So we'll take a look at that. All right, so as you've probably already noticed, here on my desktop, I have a folder. It is my preferences folder that is open. And this is something that I like to, it's a great way to learn about software and what happens when you do things. You notice here in this list of what we have right here, Finder, Doc, Apple Spaces, down here we'll see one of them, this COM FileMaker Client Pro 12P list. Where does this factor into the MonkeyBread plugin? Well, the MonkeyBread plugin allows you to modify and control a preferences file along with all of the other things that we're going to talk about. This gives me an opportunity to show you how I implement a lot of different things. Now, what's great about your operating system and software is you can see that just right there, it shifted. In fact, sorting your preferences in a reverse order of date modified is a great way to see what's happening as software is modifying its own preferences. For example, if we go into FileMaker here and I show the data viewer, which happens to be off screen, but I'll bring that on screen right now. And I'll go to the Watch tab. Now, one of the things we do as FileMaker developers is a lot of times we have a lot of maybe preset things that we want here in this list, such as I have get temporary path, get file path, what have you. Well, by mere virtue of the fact that I removed those items, I have modified the data viewer preferences. Now, when we go over to this window, we can see that the FileMaker Pro 12 has already shifted up because of that change. And we can see that universal access just shifted above it. So preferences are constantly being written to. The great thing about having preferences outside of your software is it's a place that the operating system allows you to persist some settings. Now, how do I put this into my software? Well, as I mentioned in the MonkeyBread plugin, one of the primary ways that I implement is I will go to the manage and I will manage custom functions. So the custom functions that we have right here in this particular file is a singular place where I can choose to add my own code. Now, I'm a proponent of using custom functions, not just for functions, but also for functionality specific to your solution, because it's basically the one place where you can have singular code that you don't have to sprinkle throughout multiple scripts or multiple calculations. So we can create for any software solution that we have or that we create in FileMaker, we can manage our own preferences externally. Let's open up that data viewer again. I'll click the plus. And as I make this a little bit smaller, one of the things, just one of the 7,000 functions that we have in here is if we type MBS, and as we saw, we will get this automatic completion. If I type preferences, I don't even have to tab or complete anything. I can just hit the period, and then it will come up with all of these different options. Now, one of them you can see right here, the one that we're most interested in is list. We can get a listing of preferences in a preference file. Now, just to do this for fun, I'm going to go ahead and put this, and you can see that it expects a domain. So I'm going to put just an empty set of quotes right here, and actually I haven't even tried that, but we can see that what it's doing is it's actually returning a list of all preference files, which is actually pretty interesting. But what I'm going to do is I can do this with this dialog still open. Pop over to the Finder window here, and I can simply select this one right here. And I will hit the tab, and I will I have the return key so that I can get that value right there. Let's see if it's going to pull that out. Probably have to take the plist off. And you know what? It may be returning file by default FileMaker's preference list right there. Let's try another one right here. Let's go ahead and try the Finder list. We'll copy that. We'll come over here and see if we get something different as a result. And we do, in fact, get a different result. So these are all of the things that are stored on this Macintosh within what's called a plist. On Windows, this is going to be in the registry. So how do I implement this into my own software? Well, first off, what we want to pay attention to, and we'll go ahead and put FileMaker again, because it's fun to know that we can do this. I mean, this is one of the ways that you can customize your copy of FileMaker, because with MonkeyBread, you can read and write directly to the preferences. Now, there's an issue on the Macintosh, and it may be on Windows, what have you. There's a separate application that controls and manages preference files. In fact, they're preloaded into memory and then loaded out. And really, if I was to set to this particular preference file for FileMaker, many of the settings won't actually be taken. They won't persist. You have to shut FileMaker down and then restart it up. It really depends on how you manage this. It can be controlled. Let's go ahead and take a look at this, just because I always want you to know what is going on and what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about things that are managed, you can type in prefs, and what you're going to get is you're going to get this CF prefs D. The D at the end of most things usually stands for daemon. So this is the preferences manager, and you can see there's multiple of them. Probably one of them is from root, one of them is from me, my local logged in account, and we can see I have another account right there. Ultimately, in order to flush or get these to take, if you will, is you have to force that cprefs D to force quit, not manage it, write to FileMaker Pro, and then try to get it to recognize really fast. But learning about preferences is not what you're here for. You're here for, how can I use MonkeyBread, or how would I implement a feature that MonkeyBread has for my own solution? Well, you can see right here we've got this reverse domain name. Now, it's always good for you to own or control your own domain, but you literally can put in whatever you want. This can be com whatever, and it can be anything, and it can be multiple levels that you want. So preferably what you're going to do is have or control your own domain. So you can also do this with a local file if you were to call it local. In fact, there's a couple of domains that are reserved. There's, I think, .local. There is also .example, and these are reserved by the top level domain. I forget who it is. Oh, I'm blanking off the top of my head of who controls or manages these, but these are reserved, typically example or .local, what have you. So I could do local my app, or whatever it is. I mean, you could even do a combination of get file name if you wanted to, and the name of your file was going to be something. Of course, if your file name is going to have spaces or any other special characters, you're going to want to filter that out. So it's always better to use something specific. So in my case, I have, let's say, .com, my app, and it's special right here. And we'll call this. So this is the domain that I'm going to use for my FileMaker database. And I have this MBS preferences list. So here's how I implement into my FileMaker solution. It is via these custom functions, where I will simply do this. I will simply have this right here. Now, typically when I'm writing software, what I'm going to do is, this already is a value that I have put into another custom function. So I'm going to cut this out and just say OK right here. I usually call this something relative to what the MonkeyBread does, or whatever the functionality is. So I'm going to do short prefs list. And right now that prefs list would get the FileMaker thing. the FileMaker preferences. I'm going to create a new function, and I'm going to call this one simply domain. Now, the great thing about this is I'm obviously using the name of a parameter value. You'll see what I'm talking about. So right here. So this one function in my FileMaker solution says that this is the designation for the domain of my FileMaker software. So I say what I'm going to pass to all of these different prefs is then the domain, which that will take this value right here. So now what we have, and this is an important part of learning MonkeyBread. In fact, if you go through the MonkeyBread documentation, you will see this all over the place. We'll go into the data viewer again, and we will type in MBS, and we'll start to type in our preferences again, and we'll see what we've got right here. Fortunately, it's not a super long list. Now, a lot of these things, you have to look at the docs. We've talked about going through them. Get text with selection and drag and drop. I don't really need that. Set text selection. So the way that most things boil down to in a lot of programming, especially with APIs, are what are known as getters and setters. So if you haven't been familiar with this, you can see right here we've got get and we've got set. Now the two that we really only need is get value and set value. So I'm going to select get value, and then you can see that it wants a domain, and then it also wants a key. Now I've already got this value right here, but what I'm going to do is simply cut that, or you could copy it, go over into my preferences, and over here I'm going to say prefs get. And I'm going to paste that in right there. Now the only value that I really need to put in here is key, because I'm going to be passing in a key. So what I've done is I've effectively said I'm going to use the MonkeyBread preferences functions, but I'm going to put them in my custom functions, and I don't need to pass the value of domain because I've already made that a static value, because really my FileMaker database is only ever going to deal with that one domain. So I'm basically creating what are known as wrappers around the MonkeyBread plugin. So we're going to go ahead and at this point click duplicate. And we've got our getter, but now we're going to use our setter. And I'm going to say set. And let's see if MBS comes up here on this one. I don't know that it's going to actually autocomplete. And I do need it to autocomplete here because I don't remember all of the values of things that are wanted. So let's go back to our data viewer again right here. FileMaker or Claris, will you please implement the same calculation engine in custom functions? That's why that's not autocompleting. MBS, preferences, set value right there, and this is everything it wants. So domain, a key, etc. And so we go over to our prefs set, and then we put this in right here. Preferences set, we've got our domain, we need our key. We don't need a type because I'm not strictly typing on this one, but we're going to put in value as a parameter right there. And so now I have, and I'm just doing this just because it probably would work right there. So what I've effectively done now, and those are really easy. I could provide the file, and you would be able to just simply go in here and just simply select all of these and copy them. And then the only thing you need to change is the domain, because the domain is going to be specific to your FileMaker database. But with these now, we can do whatever we want, and what we're going to see over here is we're going to see that we will have a preferences file for our specific FileMaker database, which is really pretty cool because it will persist things even after FileMaker has shut down. Now, of course, you can persist things within a table in FileMaker. That's where you can store preferences and bring them up. But this is really good because it helps you if you're ever going to do an iOS SDK application or what have you. It's just allowing the operating system to manage something. So what we can do now is we can do a prefs list. Now what we're going to get is nothing because we have not set anything. But if we do a prefs set right there, now what's the value we're going to put in? We're going to put in, I don't know, let's put in just some long string that's just random. And what we'll do is we will call this demo right there. So you can see that we got this okay. Now what we don't see is, and I can get rid of this at this point, we can actually go in and call prefs list. And you'll see that demo has been set. Where was that set? We can see by looking over at the preferences here that we now have that right there. My app special plist. So using the MonkeyBread plugin, this is how I typically implement a lot of different things. I will go to the documentation like I showed you in the second video. I will either copy it from whatever documentation is there and adapt it for my own solution. For example, I'll show you a dialogue method that I use in order to do this, but you can see that now what we can do, and there's one I did not put in. I accidentally didn't, but I want you to make sure and get all of them. Preferences, and it is delete value. And we would have our domain and key. So we'll go over and put that one in there. We'll just duplicate this one. We'll edit it, and we'll say prefs delete. Just because I need to show you everything that you have here. We'll get rid of that parameter. So we've got our domain, we've got our key right now, and we're able to delete that. So this is how easy it is to use a preferences file now. You can see that we've got a prefs list, and it's got demo. If I was to just type in prefs set, and I was to say user, and it's get username. There we go. That has been set. I go back to prefs list, and there we go. I've got demo and I've got user. So I now have a list of my keys that I can retrieve that even if FileMaker is shut down, those values are still going to be retrievable with the prefs get. So I type in prefs get, and what do I want? User. There it is. Matt. What was stored in demo? There it is. There's that string right there. Do I want to get rid of one of them? Well, let's go ahead and get rid of this. And we'll do a prefs delete, and we'll get rid of demo. And that was deleted. So we now look at our prefs list, and we only have user. Demo is now no longer in that preferences file. And just for the fun of it, we can go ahead and take a look at this. Let's set one other one. Pref set, let's set whatever to something. And this, again, can be, you can store, it doesn't store data stored as a FileMaker type value, but you can always coerce that with the get functions. But now what we can do is we can set this. We could quit FileMaker, which I'll go ahead right now and do. We'll quit FileMaker. And we can go look at this with an external application. So I'll open that up. You can see right there, we have the preferences. They persist, whatever, and user. These are persisted in a file that I don't have to manage in a table, and MonkeyBread can do it for me. It's really good for iOS development and for all kinds of different ways to do things. The icing on the cake in this particular situation is the fact that you can read and write, or, as we mentioned, all of these FileMaker information right here. So everything within this FileMaker, one of which is going to be a listing of all of the things that show up within a data viewer. So I'm going to show you a nice little trick on that. All right, so let's take a look at a quick little, it's not really something that I use a whole lot, but it is something that you can do. As we all know, if you've developed with FileMaker for any length of time, when a copy of FileMaker crashes, it completely wipes out all of the things that you had set within the data viewer. Now, if you like some things preset, like this temporary path, the file path, maybe some other things, it is possible using, say, for example, this custom function that we have right here, which I'll get it on a screen enough so that you could copy that if you wanted to by saving the frame and capturing that text. But essentially, let's say, for example, I always like to have get temporary path, file path, record open count, and account name, just useful environment variables in my data viewer. Well, this while function is actually cycling through the list of all of these values, and it is calling the MBS preferences set to set within the FileMaker list a watch list of a watch variable. Now, the watch variables are 0-based. That's why you can see that we've got I -1 here, so it starts at 0, 1, 2, 3, which would be equivalent to the 1, 2, 3, 4 that we have up here. But in essence, you can see the result right here of the MonkeyBread is saying, okay, okay, okay. Okay is the common response that MonkeyBread gives whenever something succeeds. But all of these values have been set using the data viewer. Now, as you're going to see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the preferences, the FileMaker preferences, with a separate editor. This is a plist editor. And you can see right here, we're getting this notice right here. The file's been modified. That's because I currently have FileMaker open. It is attempting to read and write to this. This application of plist editor opened it at a point in time, read it into memory, and the file has been changed. So I don't really want to update this. I want to keep this list. And if I sort these root by a certain order, sort them right now, scroll to the bottom, we can see that we've got all of our different watch variables. Notice that those watch variables, you can see right here, are set to the ones that I wanted. So the whole point here is it is possible to use the MonkeyBread to write to this, but as I mentioned, that cprefs D is going to actually prevent that from happening. Because if I go over here to FileMaker, we can see that the data viewer is still storing what was loaded into memory. It's not the 4 that I had set. But if I quit FileMaker, you're going to see that we're going to get this notice right here, save anyway, revert, etc. I can attempt to try to save these watch variables, and it's going to go crazy right here because cprefs D is basically trying to restore what was preserved in FileMaker as FileMaker was quitting down. It's one of the ways that the operating system preserves preferences files without actually then getting completely messed up, which was a problem if more than one application tries to write to a preferences file. But in essence, you get essentially what's happening right there. And when I click on revert right there, which is probably putting it back to what it originally was, and I scroll down, you can see right there, there's my original prefs. Temporary path, the file path, the record, and then there's my actual function in the preferences that is attempting to set the preferences. So whatever it is, you can do this type of thing with the MonkeyBread plugin, and that's what's really cool. So let's bypass how I implement. I've given you a good idea now. Oh, I did want to show you the one dialog. I'll show you an example of that. Okay, and here is just yet another way that I abstract the MonkeyBread plugin, and it is a dialog. Now, in FileMaker, the only way that you can bring up a dialog is via a script step. But if you use the MonkeyBread plugin, you can, of course, call an OS-specific dialog, meaning one that is pulled from the OS. On Windows, it'll look like a Windows dialog. On Mac, it'll look like a true Mac dialog. By that, I mean this right here. Let me set this to a value of 1 really quickly and evaluate it. So we get a dialog where we get to control the icon, title, message, whatever buttons there are. There's also default options. This dialog can be tied to the whole of this screen, meaning from here over to here, all the way down to here, and all the way over, or tied to the window. There's just so many things that you can do with the MonkeyBread plugin that tap into the OS that FileMaker doesn't give us direct access to. So one of the ways that I abstract this is, as I mentioned, rather than using multiple script steps, what I'll do is I will create one very large custom function with how I'm going to use it with many different calls to the MonkeyBread plugin. You can see that it is sprinkled in here multiple different times in order to call this dialog. But for me as a developer, what ends up happening is I end up with, let's make sure this isn't going to trigger. It is, because I want to put that to 0. Otherwise, it'll evaluate over and over again. Also, key thing, when you're using the MonkeyBread plugin, turning this off, automatically evaluate, is a really good idea. Because if I have this checked and I actually set this to 1, it would try to come up infinitely with thousands of dialogues, and I would be stuck, and I have to know how to get out of that. Unfortunately, is that sometimes it's not super easy, and you end up having to force quit sometimes. So this you want to turn off until you confirm that your code actually works. But what I could do with all of this code now is I can, of course, go over to my custom functions. If I had a file open, we'll go to open a file. And there we are. We're in a file, and I would go to my custom functions, and I would actually put all that code in, and then I would just call the custom function dialog. And now I can call from any code, anywhere, a hide calculation, conditional formatting, anywhere, and I can draw this dialog. And of course, I would be passing in whatever parameters I want, like the title, the message, button 1, button 2, and button 3. And I, of course, would map those to what I have here, and I probably wouldn't be using locally scoped variables, but you get the idea. It makes it much easier for me to now be able to, in the whole of my solution, if I'm writing a script, just send in here, come in here and set a variable to of dialog, dialog to, let's get to the calculation engine right there so that we can see it. And I've got super large right there because of what we've been doing, but show dialog. And then I just simply pass in the parameters that I want. So that abstraction is really nice because I've used the custom function to make it easier for me to use the MBS, and all those different MBS calls aren't sprinkled all throughout my script. They're all shoved away conveniently in that custom function, and I know it's going to do what I want for using the MBS, which is really pretty cool. So for the remainder of this video, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to do a very cursory, and look at that, there's a OS dialog from FileMaker, of all of the functionality. Let's go ahead and revert that I consider useful and valuable in the MonkeyBread plugin. I'm just going to walk through the examples and talk you through some of the ways that you can use the functionality that I've used, or those that I haven't, I'll take a guess at. So let's walk through the examples folder and just talk about what you can and what you basically find in the MonkeyBread plugin. All right, so let's do this. Let's go through. I could spend 2 hours, 3 hours. I could do a 7-day course on all the different things that are MonkeyBread. What I'm going to attempt to do, in order to wrap this out, because the video has already gotten to be pretty long, is simply go through these folders and tell you whether I've used it and what it could be used for. I also have some notes here that I made where I will talk about them just really briefly. Things that are super valuable. One of the fundamental ones is a color picker right here. You can see that we've got a color picker. It brings up the OS native picker, and as you slide this and when you release, the color is updated automatically. But this is what the user is used to. Now, FileMaker will allow you to hack a color picker using FileMaker's color changing abilities with you have to use a special character. It's a block. It's not completely obvious. It basically works like this. With text selected, which would be a block, you can come in and you can actually change the text color. But that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to the user, where you can then grab the RGB value, the hex value, off of the color that you change using the function getAsCSS, I think. It's just a whole hackish way when you can just use the MonkeyBread plugin right there and use an OS native picker. So that right there is a core functional thing that's super useful. File manipulation. Anything within the files area. This is absolutely critical right here. File I/O, FileMaker, its own functions, all the get data, read data, all this other stuff, they're nothing compared to the MonkeyBread. Anything that you want to do with files is absolutely awesome, with renaming, overriding, moving files around, doing all kinds of stuff file related. And of course, you can go through all of those examples. You already have access to them. Another core functionality thing is the barcode generation. So anything that you need to do with barcodes, it will do it fast and it'll do it really awesome. Of course, if you need a QR code, there's no reason for you to go find that code anywhere. It's right here. It's an example file. You've got it available to you. Dialogues. We just saw that anything that you want to draw on screen. In fact, let's see, Mac OS, there's one really interesting thing that I wanted to show. MapKit. There it is right there. Let's just open up one of these really quickly so that you just get a good sense of what's going on. So one of the things that you need to understand about the MonkeyBread plugin is the MonkeyBread plugin is able to attach to Windows. So this window, he is able to go out to the operating, so will not go out to the operating system. He's using a framework that's available from the operating system in order to do something. This won't be on Windows, obviously. But when I click this button, Create Map View right here, and it puts this map on this window, this is not in the FileMaker file. All he's done is because he knows this window is here, he's gone to the framework of the map kit from Mac OS, and he's attached it to this window. You can see that because if I go into layout mode and there's nothing here. This is just a block right here, and he is simply attaching because of the name of an object. And he can do this for multiple different things. With the dialog, he's attaching to the window, but the dialog is being drawn by the OS. So these things where he's able to create a map and you have full functionality is simply a function call. It's just right there with the ability to drag and all kinds of stuff. Now, the interaction with this is limited to whatever he's implemented with regards to his functionality. If, for example, I wanted there to be a circle right here that draws around Evansville, it may be possible if he's got functions. I haven't used them extensively because I haven't used MapKit. I've used Google Maps via JavaScript more, but that is just things that are possible. Moving on. Anything that you need to do in order to communicate with hardware. This is called serial I/O. Any hardware that you want to communicate with, you can do that. And you don't have to just buy one plugin. There are plugins out there where you buy the one plugin and it just does serial I/O. Why? You get 7,000 plus all the other things that I've shown you in this MonkeyBread plugin. You get the serial I/O if you need that. And then finally, the last thing that is on my plate that makes this so critical is iOS. Actually, this is not the examples folder. When you get it, is going to show all of these examples. What I did is I modified the examples so that I could see all of them at one time in an iOS SDK app. And so essentially, I call this one application in my iOS SDK app, then references all of these, letting me test all of them in a mobile device all at one time in order to see what functionality is here. I almost glossed over it. Graphics. Any type of graphics manipulation you're able to do with Graphics Magic. Other than that, those are the core things that I've used. There are things that go way beyond what you maybe haven't even thought about. So, for example, I'm building an iOS application. I've built a couple of them, but I'm building one right now that though each application on the same network needs to be able to respond to a call if I want to set it. So this thing right here called webhook actually allows you to, I know it's abstract when you think about it. Let's go ahead and delete this. I'll delete both of those, and then I will start this up right here. And notice that it says start here. You click start, and then you go to localhost this value right here. I'm going to snipe this text. This is Text Sniper on the Mac. It allows you to copy something, whatever you see on the screen right away. Let's go over to a web viewer, and we'll create a new one right here on screen. And watch what happens when I simply paste that in. So you can see right here it says click start, then go to this place. So essentially what is happening right now is my local copy of FileMaker is running the MBS plugin. The MBS plugin has functions that allow me to create a web server. You can do it with WebSockets too, if you're familiar with that. This web server, you can see right here, if I go to this, actually will create and capture a record. So what this means is that, let's say, for example, with an iOS SDK app or anything else, you can basically set up a watcher or a responder, something that is sitting there waiting on the local network that can receive traffic or can receive input. And that's what it does, is it will create records or do things, respond based on the fact that it's running its own little web server inside of the MBS plugin. And again, you can do that with WebSockets. So things that you haven't even thought of before, you can do with the MonkeyBread plugin. Anything with DNS values, you can set up your own hotkeys. If you're on Windows, you want to use any of the F keys, F1 through F12, you can do that. On a Macintosh, remember, and maybe on Windows too, anything that will receive or intercept keys before it gets to the MonkeyBread plugin will prevent this from working. For example, I use an application called Carabiner, which allows me to make my keyboard. I can emulate Vim bindings for moving across the Finder, meaning I can use like Control J and Control K is what I'm using right there to go up and down. Carabiner intercepts that, so setting hotkeys with the MBS plugin for me doesn't work because I prefer to have that. Markdown is a language for making markup of HTML much easier. You've got archives. Actually, this was deprecated. You can see that he's got archive right here. Anything zipping related, you want to go to the archives. XML, Excel, Word files, any window manipulations, any web viewer manipulations, anything that you want to capture from a scanner. Utility functions. There's a ton of stuff in here. Just go through these. You want to control mouse cursor, fonts. You want to load those. It's just incredible. Third party, this is going to be, I haven't done a whole lot, but I can see Apple Touch Bar if you wanted to control that. If you want to do your syntax color in the free version or the free portion, use this syntax colorizer right there. Haven't done a whole lot myself, but powerful. Any text manipulation, any SQL outside of FileMaker or inside FileMaker, smart cards, anything that you want to do where you've got an external technology, Python, Ruby, you name it, just call it via the shell. Sending command is probably the Windows equivalent. Script triggers, maybe he's got a few more. I haven't used it. Run task, that's probably Windows. Yep. Run shell script on mask, which is going to probably, you could set up a cron tab if you wanted to. Remote control, moving the mouse. I mean, anything that's in the OS, MonkeyBread has pretty much tapped it. Registration is specific to his registration. Regular expressions is pattern matching, something that I have begged FileMaker to do since 1995. And it's still, there's no programming environment on the planet that I know of that does not have regular expressions, but yet FileMaker doesn't. Sorry, I'm really bitter about that one. Proj, don't know, I haven't used Proj. You'd have to look into that. Any type of printer control. Preferences we looked at length. PHP, if you're going to implement that. OS scripting, it's probably Apple script related, yep, or VB script even here. OCR, which you can do after you've captured anything with Twain. Anything networking based, sockets, SSL, TCP, UDP, Bonjour. Holy cow, it's all in here. MongoDB, if you need to interact directly with a hosted MongoDB. MIDI, anything you're doing with music, that's going to be MIDI. Menu, anything that you want to, you can do a right-click menu, which isn't a feature in FileMaker. So if you're doing a Mac app or a Windows app, you can do that right-click. Of course, it won't work on iOS. Math, that's going to have just a few math-related things. We've got Mac-only functionality right there, where you can do all kinds of stuff, probably interacting with the native contacts, calendar, etc. Mac and iOS, you've got examples right here. There's more contacts, address, core location, JavaScript. There's MapKit examples, PDF kit, all kinds of things. You, of course, should have already probably gone through all of this. And finally, we've got helpers for JSON, JavaScript, and Java. We've got our iOS, Graphics Magic, anything you could do. Anything you want to do with images, you can do it with Graphics Magic. And I may have made a reference. I'm used to Image Magic, which was the precursor to Graphics Magic. Graphics Magic was a fork of that. Files, encryption, anything that FileMaker can't do with encryption, you could do. Anything with PDF. I think this is the paid portion. He sub-licenses Dyna PDF. Otherwise, there is some native PDF built in. Just look at the documentation. Drag and drop, That's probably Mac specific stuff. Dictionary, which is just another way of dealing with serialized data, just like JSON. Curl, he's got his own implementation if you don't want to use FileMaker. Again, I would use a wrapper functions around that and make sure and use those so that if you could go that way. But again, this is not script step based like FileMaker is. This is function based. So you'd be able to do it within conditional formatting, hide calcs, etc. Cups, which is going to be, that's Linux printer based. List printers, list jobs. That would be on Linux. So if you were printing from a printer attached to FileMaker server running on Linux is when you would probably use that. Container manipulation, anything there. Barcodes, AV recorders, and then audit logs. Do you want an audit log in your FileMaker solution? And if you're already using the MBS plugin, it's here. Well, now you've got it. So that is just a cursory, very quick walkthrough of all the different things that are available in the MonkeyBread. And there's probably many other functions that are not even covered in this list of examples. But I hope in this video, you've been able to get a good sense of just some of the power, the things that you can do with MBS that make it so convenient that once you pay that price, if it is the higher price, if you're paying for a server install or the iOS SDK, I know that's $500, the server install may be $300. Once you've gotten over that price point, you can see how much is here and how valuable, absolutely incredibly valuable, astonishingly actually, so much is here that for the price that you're paying, that once you've got it running, you're going to be able to do anything and everything you want. Again, if I was doing a hosted solution, I wouldn't go for multiple seats unless I absolutely knew I had needed the functionality on each client, because that's a lot to manage. I would go with a server plugin and install it on server and do server-side scripts, have it do what it needs to do on the server. The data's already there. Excellent. If you're doing iOS, yes, I would buy the plugin. If you're going to be developing it, you will need at least one seat in order to develop locally on your Mac to see what's going on. And again, it would be nice if you did buy the server version, if he would give you a one-seat license that would actually work with that if you're going to pay that higher price point. But if you are interested, the link in the description of this video will take you to where you can get a discount. It's a limited time, so it really depends on when this video was shot. But I hope you have gotten a really good sense of the fact that MonkeyBread is worth it, even if you install just the free version. So, I'd like to wish you much luck with your own FileMaker development, and until next time, happy file making.
We hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, and we'd like to say thank you for your subscription and your support. If you're not already a subscriber, head on over to www.filemakermagazine.com/subscribe for more information about the benefits of joining.